In the Trenches with Ryan Roxie.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to a live stream edition of In the Trenches with Ryan Roxie podcast. You know that during these strange times, we are doing strange things like live streaming podcasts. But I think it's probably one of the best things we can actually do. And today is, I'm not going to lie, one of my best guests because I've been listening to him play guitar for years. I've been trying to pick up licks, songs, ideas, everything from this man since way back, and he knows how much I look up to him, and I'm so happy that he came on to In the Trenches with Ryan Roxie today. This is actually, I would say, gold medal winner of being in the trenches, because once I go through a little bit of the history of him, you're going to understand that he has played on so many more records than I even imagined before I went down that rabbit hole of checking him out. So I'm glad we've been friends for years, but I'm really happy now to introduce him as a special guest on the podcast. Would you please welcome Mr. Steve Stevens?
Ryan Roxie.
What's happening, my friend? How you doing?
Under the circumstances, doing all right.
It's a loaded question these days. I mean, everybody is basically, everybody's hunkered down. And we were talking about this, right before we went live. How are you spending the time? What are you doing these days now that everybody's, didn't you just this morning have some sort of order where you're just stuck indoors, right?
We finished our Vegas residency on Saturday with Idol, and then we came home Saturday evening, and since then we've been locked away here, and then the governor announced last night that nobody goes in or out, basically, other than groceries or, fundamental stuff like that. So here we are. But as most of us musicians know, we're used to periods of time when you have to write for a record or you're recording, where this is basically what it's like.
Oh, I've always said that as being a guitar player and trying to be a guitar player in the rock and roll business, there's always a financial crisis. There's always some sort of crisis.
Yeah, and even as a kid, to get proficient on your instrument, you become a social hermit anyway to practice and listen to your records and, for hours on end. So we've been training for this, man.
Yeah, I put that in our Alice Cooper band chat the other day. I said, hey, we strum instruments for a living. We're survivors. We'll get through this.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
But that being said, I was telling my buds that you were one of the last Mohicans to play a live show because our tour got postponed about a week and a half ago. And then when I called you up to invite you on the show, you said, yeah, one of my residencies is not, we're not doing that, but we are doing this one. So I was a little bit surprised, but I was like, I'm more curious about how the audience was. Is there this paranoia at a live show, or does everyone just give it up and say, you know what, we're here for the show?
Right. No, the reaction was great. Obviously, Billy gave a little bit of a talk to the audience and told them how appreciative we were that, they showed up and then they came, and we didn't do meet and greets and all that kind of stuff. Literally, finished Saturday, and now Vegas is closed down. All of our Vegas friends are hunkered away like we are. So,
wow. And that's all West Coast now, because honestly, my name's Ryan Roxie. This is Steve Stevens. I think we are practicing social distancing as we are actually the definition of social distancing. We're being social, but we're very distant. I'm talking to you. I'm talking to you from Stockholm, Sweden. You're talking to me from Los Angeles, California, and you're originally from Brooklyn, New York.
I was born in Brooklyn. I'm a Queens kid, though.
Queens kid. All right.
Yeah. I was born in Brooklyn. And my parents lived in an area called Brownsville, which is where Mike Tyson and Riddick Bowe are from. So we kind of got out of there. We moved to Far Rockaway when I was about 1.5.
Okay.
And was raised in Far Rockaway.
Right on,
Yeah,
right on.
yeah.
Yeah, I used to, my best buddy Stefan, we used to take the L train all the way out to Canarsie. So I know the
Okay.
boroughs. I know the boroughs
Yeah.
pretty well. I know Canarsie, I know Brooklyn. I when I first moved to New York with Electric Angels, we lived in Long Island City. And
Okay.
apparently now LIC is unaffordable. You can't even look at it.
Unbelievable what's happened there. Yeah, totally. Yeah.
So what age did you pick up guitar and just start rocking it?
I never intended to be a guitar player. My dad brought home, I remember he paid about $25 for a Burl Ives, dating myself here, Burl Ives songbook and guitar. And he brought it home for himself. But he was a hard-working dude. He didn't have time to put in on it. And little by little, it ended up more in my room. And my brother, I have an older brother of 5 years, and a lot of his friends were guitar players. This was like the height of the Dylan, just beginning with like James Taylor, Joni Mitchell era. And his friends would come over and go, he's making a hell of a noise, but it's in time. And I think to spare my parents from this racket, they sent me to lessons. And there was a famous protest singer from my neighborhood named Phil Oakes. And Phil's sister was my first guitar teacher. And that was about, I think I was about eight years old when I got with her.
I know, you know what, when you mentioned Burl Ives, of course I had the Mel Bay Book of Chords. And I think one of the first songs, it wasn't really a Burl Ives song, but it was Down in the Valley.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Yeah, wasn't that one of the first songs that we all learned? Everyone always wants to say it's Smoke on the Water, And I just now recently realized that was never a power chord riff, right?
Right, yeah.
But
Yeah.
And you were the one, Steve. I know I'm jumping all over from the past to the present, but you taught me the right way to play Whole Lotta Love.
Oh, geez.
Yeah.
It's funny that
When you bend that first note over, of course I messed up the first chord, but
and where I learned it from was Joe Walsh.
So Joe Walsh taught you, you taught me.
Not personally, but there's a great video on YouTube, and Joe Walsh sold Jimmy Page's first Les Paul. Jimmy was on the first Led Zeppelin tour. He's playing a Telecaster, and Joe Walsh says, "Hey man, you got to check out this guitar." Jimmy gets it, and rest is history. And so in this video clip, Joe says, "Let me show you something. This is how you play Whole Lotta Love." And a light bulb went off. I went, "Oh my God, it sounds like Whole Lotta Love."
I learned it off a YouTube video from you. You were explaining it on an interview, and then
it's such a mind whatever.
Well, I know that we have a lot of guitar players on there, and I know there's going to be some questions that are going to fall through the chat, and that's the beauty a little bit of the live stream podcast, because usually I have some pretty much a little script and a set of what I want to do, but at the end of this, if there's some great questions, which there always is, I'd love to maybe have a couple of them pop in, if that's all right.
Yeah, sure.
All right, cool. So, I mean, most people would say they know you as Billy Idol's right-hand man. You are the guitar player for so many years, behind so many great songs, so many great albums with Billy Idol. But when I started going down that rabbit hole, I started realizing one thing, Steve. You have dealt with some very huge personalities over the year. And that I think a lot of people don't understand that how important to be a working musician, to be a right-hand guy of someone, you need to deal with some really big personalities. That's a good way of saying it, right?
Right. Yeah.
But like I go down the list and I just name a few. It's like from all shapes and sizes, literally. Billy Idol, Michael Jackson, Vince Neil, Sebastian Bach, Adam Bomb. I mean, these are, and the one thing that I was most amazed to find out, and tell me if this is true or not, there was a Japanese artist that is named, I know I'm going to say it wrong. I'm going to, Kisouki Humero.
Yeah, Humero, yeah.
Humero. You made more albums with him or contributed more albums with him than any of the others? Is that true?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of like repackages. I essentially did 3 albums with him.
Right.
And during the 90s, I was in Japan for 3 months out of the year with an all Japanese band. So I was the only gaijin but it was an incredible experience. If anyone has ever seen Lost in Translation, that was my life.
You were Bill Murray.
I was Bill Murray. I mean, it was incredible. I mean, the craziest things would happen. I remember this is before Iron Chef was seen on US TV, and it was on a cable channel, and it was called Kitchen Stadium. And I mentioned to somebody that I knew the show. Well, I eventually ended up on the show in Japan, which was kind of, and I didn't know, we went to the show and I said, oh, I'll be in the audience. Oh, there's no audience. You are on Kitchen Stadium. And there's
the main attraction, kind of like kind of like this podcast. You're the main guy right now.
No, and it's like they go to me at one point and they say, oh, it's all in Japanese. Visiting dignitary. So and that guy says, stand up, and I go. And I look like a deer caught in the headlights. I'm just like, it's just too surreal.
You were already pretty well known in Japan as not just a solo artist, but you also have been known for years with Billy Idol.
Sure.
And I think for me, one of the coolest trios was you, Billy Idol, Keith Forsey behind the desk as a producer. Yeah. Now, is that relationship still going strong? Have you guys worked together before or currently?
Well, Keith is retired down to Mexico. He and his girlfriend have a hotel down there. Nice. Yeah, Keith has always been really into boats and sailboats and power boats, and he moved down there and is living an incredible life. And I'm very jealous right now.
Well, maybe he got it right before all of us, right before it all shut down.
But he really, you're right. Keith was really the other member of the band, really, right from the get-go. And I owe so much to Keith because I was really, hadn't really properly recorded in the studio or anything when we did Billy's first album. And there was a lot of times where I didn't know how to get a guitar sound or something. And Keith could have easily got a session guy in there to do it. And he was patient with me and said, no, you're Billy's guitar player and we're going to work on this.
You certainly hammered out one of the best guitar tones that I've been trying to recreate for so many years. I know you always have a couple tricks up your sleeve. You were one of the first guys that I ever met that had done some echo effects, like special echo effects. There was some ones that were unique just to you. You were one of the first guys I remember, and I don't know if this is a dark thing to bring up or if it's cool, the Roland G700. Remember
right,
that? You played that? And but all in all, it was like you were the sort of guitar player of my choice because, and I say this in interviews always, I say, you are proficient enough to outshred anybody, but you understand the song first and foremost, and you're obviously rock and roll blues based, and that makes for such a good all-encompassing guitarist, I think. And you concentrate on the parts, parts.
Right.
And
I think you like myself, we love a good song. Yep. It's a solo is great, but the power of a good song. And working with, obviously how many years have you been with Alice now?
On and off with Alice, I think since puberty, or at least since the fact that I felt, I don't even know, I'm still going through puberty, I think at one point, but we're lucky to do what we get to do, no doubt. But I've been with Alice off and on for over 20 years and we have that relationship. And the cool thing for me is I get to play a bunch of different great lineups over the years, whether it's the original lineup or all through the years. Now, I'm trying to think, have you and Alice ever recorded together?
No, I've only met him once.
Wow.
And
I don't know how he let you slip by. Because he loves, whenever I bring Steve Stevens up, he says, yeah, that's my guy. I like that.
Oh, yeah. But we probably, you're a bit younger than me, but we the great
Not
thing about
much.
but the great thing about rock and roll is there's all these records that we can go back on, like walking into a library of sonic, bliss. And I think we probably listened to a lot of the same stuff. A lot of the for me, it was always English rock from 69 to 73. Anything in that era, whatever it was, I was devouring it. There was a radio show on WNEW in New York during those years called Things from England every Friday. And literally, I would buy everything they played during that show. And it was all, whether it was glam, Sweet, or Slade, or
course,
that,
yeah.
or some of the, they premiere the early, whatever Led Zeppelin record was coming out, or even some of the cooler progressive rock bands that were happening. I just devoured all of that stuff. And when it, even though Billy Idol and I grew up, an ocean apart, we grew up a lot on the same music, although, punk rock was a kind of a blowback to a lot of the excesses of that stuff. But when we started to talk about music, we had the same record collection.
I think Billy Idol's attitude and your sort of depth and knowledge of rock and roll, classic rock, blended perfectly. Because, I mean, like I said, when you talk about those old albums, you can go back and reference first Billy Idol album, Rebel Yell, of course, Whiplash Smile. All these albums for me were great blueprints of how to write great parts for songs. Because I've always said that I'm a big parts guy, and
right.
if I could name my top 5, I'd say Brian May, probably top at writing amazing guitar parts and solos that complement the song.
Genius.
Other guys, though, that might fly under the radar a little bit would be Neil Giraldo from the Pat Benatar Band.
Great.
One of those great guys, parts guys. Yeah. And Elliot Easton from the Cars.
Oh, absolutely.
Do you have any of those guys that are like that?
Absolutely. I think the thing is, for if you work with a singer, or as I've had the fortune to work with many great singers, if you're a fan of them, you want to support what it is they're trying to do. And I remember whenever I'd, go in and do a session or something with somebody, I'd always go, what's the lyric? And they'd be like, well, you're the guitar player. And I go, yeah, but I have to at least know what it is you're trying to convey, so I can kind of put that in the stew somehow. Because, that's, I want to support a great song, and, the solo is great, and it's a nice little deviation of that, but I don't live for the solo, well, I live for the riff.
You definitely made a name for yourself with the soloing on like the soundtracks, the movie soundtracks. Cause I want to before I get into just the movie soundtracks, I want to just ask one or two things about the other lead singers that you've worked with. Because obviously Billy Idol's the most well-known partnership that you guys have had, but you've also guested on Michael Jackson. With Michael Jackson. And there is a little story that I was sent, a little question. I don't know if it's a sort of a controversy or just sort of a conspiracy theory, but I need to clear it up. Because, or for this guy, he said that you played on Dirty Diana, but and was there also Smooth Criminal as well?
No.
Okay, so not Smooth Criminal. Yes, Dirty Diana, and there was some sort of rumor that you had met Eddie Van Halen, and he had said that he never got paid for Beat It. Is that true?
Well, I mean, I knew Ed before I did the Michael Jackson thing, and the connection was I was signed to Warner's by Ted Templeman.
Oh, wow.
And so Quincy, the story I got was that Quincy Jones called up Ted, and this is, they're working on the follow-up after,
which one was it?
Beat It.
Yeah.
So I'm on the bad record. So this is after Thriller. And obviously Beat It was such a huge success. And so Quincy calls up Ted and goes, we got another rack track, and we need a guitar player. Obviously, we can't do it with Eddie again. Who do you suggest? And Ted graciously suggested me. We had been meeting and had become friends and would hang out and listen to records. Ted is one of the coolest record people that I have ever met. And he suggested me, so I got a call from Quincy. And, I came out to LA to do the track. I didn't really know what do you charge? So I called Dad up and I said, what did you charge? And he said, man, I didn't charge anything. You know, Dave's mad at me, but you know, man, you can't put a price tag on it. He says, you know, I didn't write the song. I played the solo on it, and you know, and so that's what I did. I didn't charge for it. I didn't feel, you know, I'm not a writer on it, and the what it did for my career was worth more than any money.
It just blossomed everything. Now I'm not sure of that. Did that open up the door for the Top Gun, or was that after, or was it around the same time? Because there's a lot of years in there where
it was after, and man, I always tell people, you never know. Say yes to everything. so the way Top Gun came down was Keith Forsey's buddy, who he used to make records with for Donna Summers, was Harold Faltermeyer. So on Whiplash Smile, Harold came in to do the keyboards. And we're working about the third day in, and he says, I'm working on this movie, Top Gun. Let me show you a clip. And this is the days of, you know, Betamax. You know,
of course. There's
puts
no
the video in.
Yeah,
puts the video in. And I go, I think I recognize that guy. Yes, Tom Cruise from Risky Business. Okay. And then he shows me the aerial footage, which now you look at it kind of looks like a little mini plane on a stick. But
I think you make a bigger movie with your iPhone these days. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, back then it was like, wow, look at that. You know? So I said, yeah. You know, he says, we've got this theme and would you like to do it? Absolutely. So I was already set up in the studio. We were already tracking.
So you just came. Oh, so it was just another session for you.
Yeah. At the end of the Idol session one day, take the tapes, put another reel on the machine. And I think the whole thing took maybe 2.5 hours. Amazing. And then,
Now they're making a remake of Top Gun. Have you been, has anyone reached out to you for that? Or do you think that's going to get all political?
Yeah. I met with Harold in Munich when we were there, and they've brought him back in addition to Hans Zimmer to do the soundtrack. And from what I understand, they are using the original theme for the film. Might be remixed or whatever. And I'm really glad about that, because I wouldn't have wanted to try and recreate something that, you know, was done 35 years ago, and we won a Grammy for it. It's I don't want to touch that, you know. I mean, it's like
sometimes it's hard. Like there's certain things you can't cover. It's hard to cover a Beatles song, because who's going to do it better than the Beatles? And maybe a soundtrack that won you an Oscar. So
I mean, it'd be so. I'm more than happy that they're actually using the original. In some context, I don't know exactly how.
Not a lot of people know, but you also did music for the movie Speed right around the same time. Sandra Bullock, right?
We did, we did. Billy and I did the title track for Speed. Yeah,
I love it, man. I like talking about all these old stories, because right now it gives us a little bit of relief, because I know there's a lot of people self-quarantining. They're doing the right thing. They're self-quarantining. They're hanging out, but there's something about a live conversation, or that you're a part of right now, that it doesn't beat. It beats watching Netflix. Like maybe after our talk and people are watching this, maybe they will go watch Top Gun and they'll listen to the soundtrack and they'll have a new appreciation for it. But I just want to move on a little bit to your solo stuff, and because the flamenco guitar work, I think a lot of the guitarists, at least that are on the chat listening to, they know just how good you are. Maybe some of the people that know you from Billy don't know about the flamenco side as you. What is your approach when you come to a solo record? Do you say, okay, this record I'm going to go more of a rock vibe, or this one's going to be flamenco, or do I blend them all together?
Right. The way that record came about was I had done the record with Vince Neil, and we were out on a road with Van Halen. And during the course of, we opened for Van Halen, and I'm like, the last thing I'm going to do is go out there and do an electric guitar solo, because in about an hour, Eddie's going to come out and play Eruption. and it'd be like,
I know it.
Move along.
Yeah.
So I had started on flamenco guitar. It was the first teacher that ever really meant that I really, really was passionate about was a guy named Nicholas Zaninovich, and he was a Romanian gypsy. He had escaped the Nazis in the Second World War with only his guitar, and he put everything. I mean, the minute this guy picked up the guitar, you almost cried because his soul was transmitted through his fingers. It's incredible. And I said, I don't know what this music is, but I want to learn it,
Were you like Steve Martin in The Jerk? This is my music.
I wish it was that easy, but cut later. And, after the Van Halen thing, it was kind of the height of the excesses in every which way. I couldn't play any louder, couldn't play any faster, so it was time to kind of like reassess what I was doing. And I went to see Paco de Lucia at the Wilton Theater, and it's 3,000 people, and people are dancing, and women are, like getting emotional over music, and I'm like, it's on such a high technical level, and females like it, and everybody likes it because it's beautiful. It's not just, you don't feel like there's scorecards being held up after he does a flurry of notes or something.
Oh yeah.
And I just like went, wow, there's a way for me to do something technically flash, but still entertain people who maybe don't give a crap whether I'm playing guitar or whatever. So I decided to do, to put away my electric guitar for a year and do this flamenco-based record, which took me from France. I worked with people in Bordeaux, in London, in Tokyo, and I mean, all I did was bring my guitar around the world with me, and I really felt connected to being a guitarist and not the excesses of, I just get on a train and go and work with somebody, and I finished mixing the record in Hawaii, and it was the most fitting, stress-free. It's one of the few records of mine that I've played on that I can listen to and really enjoy. Most of it is what it's like.
I remember going to your place years ago, and you playing me a couple of these. They might have been the demos for this, or they might have ended up being
probably.
And I just remember sitting back going, man, this is a completely different side of Steve Stevens that people are going to check out and see, because at the end of the day, most of the people that have listened to you with Billy Idol, they know you as a gunslinger, and you have, I love the fact that you've always been sort of a Marshall type player. I know you played Marshalls, but you have a lot of new equipment. You always are you've been playing with Boss Effects, I know, for many years back in,
yeah.
But what currently, because I just saw you, I think I just saw you a year ago at a festival or something. And I was like, what is that sound that he's getting? So maybe, without spilling all the beans, maybe give some of the, guitar geek in me a little bit of the secrets of what you're playing these days as far as guitars and amps.
Sure. My older Marshalls are just not roadworthy, and even things like some of them, the recording Marshalls I have are from the late 60s, and I've had to have filter caps replaced and things like that. They're just not roadworthy. So probably about 20 years ago, I hooked up with Dave Friedman, who was just doing effects boards and things like that. I had one of those. I'm guilty of having one of those massive rack.
You're the reason why I
a
had
nuclear
such a big
reactor
pedal board.
on
Yeah.
So, but it did. It did everything. But you kind of lost the original guitar tone with. We were still experimenting in the 80s with that. So Dave helped me kind of, get back to maybe the original sounds. And I gave him my original Marshall that basically it's one amp that's on Top Gun and Whiplash Smile and the Michael Jackson.
So you have that special, is that one? Because I have a Marshall JCM 800 that's kind of my go-to, that's been on almost every record that I've played on. And it's a JCM 800. And,
yeah, this is an old Plexi, and it's, you got to turn it all the way up to, the thing is loud as hell. But
it moves there.
It does, and it records really well and takes pedals great. But anyway, so Dave said, why don't we try and clone that amp and, and put it in a master volume so it doesn't have to be on 11 and all. which was what we did. And eventually, over the years, Dave refined his amp making and then started his own company. And then I have a signature amp. We're actually coming out with version 2 of the amp that
Your
is a
signature
little bit
series.
more.
Okay.
Yeah, it does a little bit more. He's got a very cool feature happening in his amps where on a foot switch there's a separate master and a separate gain which are linked together. So if you go to a solo, not only do you get a little bit more saturation, not distortion, but saturation, but it also, the amp gets louder. So you really are like, your sound man is, you don't need a sound man. You're your own sound man at that point.
You have your own boost. And this time everybody can hear you.
In the mix,
You're in the mix. I love it. Well, what about guitars? As far as, because I know, part of the reason why I've had this kinship with you is I've been a Les Paul guy. We're both kind of that humbucker style. Total transparency. Back in the day, I had an ex-girlfriend buy me a guitar. She it's not ever a good idea when girlfriends want to buy you an instrument, because they're walking ducks when they go, they're sitting ducks when they go into the music store. Cause like, bam, line them up, shoot them down, because they're going to get the most, ripped off ever. So girlfriends out there, don't buy your guy a guitar unless you've cleared it exactly what guitar it is. So I think she bought me at first a Flying V that was one of those V2s that had the weird, pickups that were like heart-shaped pickups. Sure. It looked more like a coffee table, basically. But then I asked them to, I go, is it okay if I just maybe return it and get something I want? And there was a Hamer Steve Stevens model, right? Or something that you play, because back in the day, I know you had a Hamer model, but
we did.
And then that got me down the whole humbucker world, and then I went to Les Paul's. But what is your current guitar that you're playing? Because I see a lot of pictures. I'm on the internet looking for good pictures for our ad, and I'm like, what is this guitar? Tell me more about it.
The company is called Nags, and Joe Nags, unbeknown to me, in the 90s, I was playing a PRS guitar that I loved, a single cut, a McCarty single cut. And I loved the guitar and toured in Japan for a couple of years with it. And I wasn't looking for a guitar endorsement, but I got a call from Peter Wolf, who was one of the main distributors and artist reps at Hamer back in the day. And he said, I'm working on a new guitar line with a guy named Joe Nags, who built your PRS. He was the head of the custom shop. So I said, send me a couple of guitars. I'm not really looking for an endorsement right now. I'm happy with what I'm playing. Sent me a couple of guitars. I said, yeah, they're close, but not really, what I was looking for. He said, well, what do you want? We'll build you anything you want. And I said, anything? He goes, there's nothing we won't do for you. And at that point, I realized, I had basically my own guitar company to build me my dream guitar, which they did. And it's an American. I was very adamant that it was an American company. It's a handmade instrument. Nice. It's a high-end instrument that, I'm not, it's great that I have a guitar that I'm comfortable with, but I'm really proud of the company. It's grown. They're really good people. The initial guitar, 10% of what went to Music Cares for,
that's cool, man.
Of our proceeds. And now they've expanded, and they're doing, it's a very hard thing to have there's only 15 people at the company. It's very hard to keep an American handmade guitar company afloat, and they've managed to do it. And they're just, if I have a question about something or need something, I pick up the phone and I call the guy who's actually making the guitar.
Well, when we do the rebroadcast of this, I'll slap the website on there for sure. And I was just reminded, yes, there's a lot of girlfriends that know equipment. Yes, you are right. I'm sorry about that. And there's a lot of boyfriends that buy their girlfriends equipment to play. And here's the deal. partly responsible for that is the guitarist that I play with, Nita Strauss, of inspiring a whole new wave of female guitarists as well. So you know what? It's the old school in me that just sort of sometimes I forget it's 2020. I was like, oh, what do you mean? What do you mean? So girlfriends and boyfriends, whatever you are. Just make sure you talk to the significant other about what guitar they want before they go and get it. So, currently, Steve, because I know that you're just wrapped up this. Was it more of a residency acoustic or residency electric or both?
No, it was full on. We had Billy and I did a series of unplugged shows, but mainly that came about to promote his book. We would go and play for the publisher or whatever, and then we decided to like bring that aspect of it out, and we did a series of shows that were really unplugged, just he and I on stage, but gave the real Billy Idol fans an opportunity to hear the stories behind the songs and stuff.
That sounded amazing. Actually, I was able
it was
to
really
catch
fun.
a lot of the stuff that was online, and it sounded really good. I think I DM'd you and say, how the hell did you get that acoustic sound? And then you just sort of went into a little bit of a math equation. There was a lot of stuff going on.
Sorry.
But so you have Billy and all the classic songs with Idol and that whole tour, whether it's acoustic or electric, but you also have a new band, Deadland Ritual.
Sure,
And you know what really sucks right now is that we have all these things going on, and pretty much for the next 2 months, the biggest things that are going to be being created, I think, are babies and podcasts. So until we can get back out there and start playing our rock and roll, I want to hear, and I think people do that are watching on the stream, they want to hear about this new band that you have. And I know who the guys are in it, but maybe better if you explain it.
Yeah. Frankie Perez is the singer, and he's been a friend of mine for probably about 15 years, and I always felt that he's kind of the unknown of the band. Well, more unknown, but known to us musicians, and I just felt he always needed the right partners and the right vehicle. Geezer Butler from Sabbath is the bass player,
total legend.
And it's Ryan, it's incredible to actually, I got goosebumps the first day we were, in rehearsal, and to hear my guitar against that bass sound. And, it's one thing to be a bass player, but it's another thing for me to hear against a sound that I grew up with as a kid. He has a very identifiable sound.
I had that same experience with Dennis Dunaway playing, when he comes up and guests with Alice, which he does a couple times a tour at least. It's just, there's a difference. There is a difference when the guy who recorded on the track is playing that part. And and I get you with the bass player thing, because his bass playing, you don't realize it until you're actually playing with him. That is a big sound of the Alice Cooper band.
Right.
So, and obviously he was a big sound of Sabbath. So,
so that, so he's, and Matt Sorum is
Matt Sorum's on drums.
We've all known. And for all intents and purposes, all the material is written, and we were in the process of negotiating a deal until
the world stopped.
Yeah.
So now the world stopped. Is everything postponed or canceled? I want to look at cup is half full or wine glass half full. Postponed. Good. Yeah, Postponed always better than completely canceled.
Yeah. The first inkling that we got is, and I'm sure you do these as well. There's, we do corporate shows, and I had about 6 corporate shows canceled in 2 days, and I went, something's going on. And so right now we're in a holding pattern, but it's a great way for me to kind of just hunker down, make sure we have the songs that we need, write some new things, see what.
It looks like you got a nice laboratory in back of you.
I've had this studio for a while, and it's it's a demo studio. It's a small little room.
Your demos sound like records. Shut up. I use GarageBand. You want to hear a real demo? Listen to one of mine.
Hey, all of my tunes start on a little, on my iPhone. sit down and write a riff. And if
is it Memos? What do you, which app do you use for that?
Memos, exactly. Yeah.
There's a one called, it's not GarageBand, but there's an actual Apple app that has like sort of you can have a drum, you can just place the drum beat and it actually finds out the strumming pattern and it'll put a mock drum thing on. When I find it, or maybe we'll put it again as one of the overlays when we do the rebroadcast. But yeah, it does always sound, good songs I think start with just an idea. It has to start somewhere and it can be put on Memos. It can be put on, a lot of people ask me, is it the riff that comes first or is it the catchphrase? Like some of those classic Idol songs, for instance, who would come to who with what?
I wish there was a blueprint because we would have had a lot more hits, but there was never a blueprint. There was always, you use the expression Jah came down, which is, God would come down and just give us the tune. And a perfect example was, Eyes Without a Face. I was living in my parents' basement in Kew Gardens, and the only radio station I could get was CBS FM. And that's the oldie station, right? Yeah. So they'd be playing these oldies, and there was like some Frankie Valli things, and they have those chord changes, 1, 4, 5, 7, those classic doo-wop things. And I kind of like went, oh wow, I'm tinkering around. And I kind of took the chords and made them major 7th, minor 7th, gave them a little bit of a darker feel to it. And we were in rehearsals to write for the follow-up to the first album, which eventually became Rebelio. And I said, hey, I'm strumming these chords, and Billy walks in, hey, what's that? I don't know. It's like some, old-timey chords, and he pulls out of his backpack lyrics. He was always writing lyrics. And he said, I think I got something that might fit that, and it was Eyes Without a Face. And it was just kind of, it was just like, it just fit.
That's magic, man. That's and that's the magic of a good duo. I think that's, whether I had that experience for a short time, for a short amount of albums with Alice, with Eyes of Alice Cooper and Dirty Diamonds, we had that sort of kinship. He'd walk into the studio and say, well, today I kind of want to write a song about a guy, a trucker that wants to, he's not gay, but he wants to dress in a wedding dress all the time. And he likes to drive his truck in a wedding dress. And that became the Ballad of Jesse Jane or something,
Great.
So, it's just weird things that happen. And then I was like, okay, well, I think I got a riff like that. I think I got a riff that could work for that.
Yeah,
so
that's right.
How it works.
Yeah.
But what I wanted to do is just sort of maybe wrap up our regular podcast, because I'm going to package this up and we'll put it out as far as on Apple, and we'll put it up on Spotify and iTunes and everything else. But if you would like to hang out for just a couple more seconds, maybe have a couple of the guest people that have been watching the stream, because it's been pretty strong, the whole entire interview and the whole entire show. Do you mind if they ask a few questions for you?
Sure.
Okay,
no
cool.
problem.
Well, I'm going to, let me wrap it up real quick and then say, well, Steve, thank you so much for being on In the Trenches with Ryan Roxie. Hopefully we can do it again. If we're still hopefully we're not hunkered down,
Yeah, right.
But if we still are, maybe I can have you on again and we can dive a little bit more into that rabbit hole and of that lovely thing we call the guitar. I actually brought my guitar today, and I know you have yours as well, but maybe next time we'll dwell a little bit more into playing. But
sure.
Again, thanks for watching, people. Thanks for listening, and just keep on spreading the words. I think on Instagram, you're at Steve Stevens. Very easy to find, right?
Right. Yep.
I'm at Ryan Roxie. Again, thank you for supporting all the musicians during this incredibly weird time. And again, Steve, thank you for coming on In the Trenches.
It's been my pleasure, Ryan. I've been your friend and your cheerleader for many years. I saw you with Dad's Porno Mag, and I loved the show.
Ah, man.
Yeah. I don't know if you remember. I came down.
At the Roxy, I believe it was.
It was an awesome band.
Yeah.
No, it was some club that I think was down on Beverly, but that was when what's his name was on drums.
Mike Fasano.
Mike Fasano.
There it is. We had to get a Mike Fasano reference in before the end of the interview. I was contractually obligated to do that. So thanks for listening.
Great songs, though.
Thanks, bud.
Really good songs.
All right. Well, we'll see you next time on In the Trenches with Ryan Roxie. Now it's time to check out a few people that perhaps want to come on and ask a question, if that's cool for Steve. And welcome to this bonus section in this bonus Q&A of In the Trenches, a live stream. Again, thank you guys for taking the time out to part of your day. I mean, you could watch any Netflix special, you could watch any Hulu show, but you chose to be with us live. You want to bring them on, Victor? Who's coming on? Hello, how you doing? What's
Doing
your...
all right. How you guys?
Hey, what's
Hello.
happening? You got a question for Steve?
Not much. I wonder, what is your favorite all-time song to play?
Well, obviously, it would be a Billy Idol song. Probably Eyes Without a Face, because it has a little bit of everything.
And now we know the story behind it, you know?
Right, and it's a ballad, but also we get to kick ass in the middle section as well. So, and a lot of people, a lot of people have they get emotional about that song because ballads always do that. So I would say that's my favorite.
Very nice, Liz. You aren't driving, actually. Were you driving? Don't be driving.
Right.
I hope she's the passenger.
Right.
Let's get another. Hey, Victor, put him on. Hello, how you doing, Anna?
Hey guys, awesome.
Hello.
First off, I wanted to say a huge thank you for you, Steve, being over here tonight, and also Ryan bringing this special person on. You both are super huge legends, but I got a question for Steve. What is generally your weirdest inspiration for a creative process? Minus the magic, obviously out there.
Weirdest inspiration. Wow. I mean, I get inspired by a lot of films, and usually they're really some of the more twisted films.
Nice.
So I think things like Ed Wood,
Absolutely.
That's surprising. Awesome.
Yeah,
that's pretty cool.
So that's probably.
Well, I think that you're going to have enough time to watch a lot of films in the next month or so. So that means a lot of songs, though. A lot of songs.
Well, hopefully.
What's up, Mr. Pedro? How you doing, brother?
Hello.
Hey, man. How are you? How are you, Steve?
All right, good.
Nice to talk to you again. Both. I don't remember 2014 or 15. I talked to Steve. Well, my question is for both of you. You both guys are the right hand of a lot of rock stars like Alice Cooper, Ryan, and Billy Idol.
Yeah.
How do you think that it's the time to put your personality, your own personality, and the time to bring the artist stuff, bring some Alice stuff, bring some Billy Idol stuff? How is the time that you do that on the shows?
You want to go answer it, Steve? You want me to tell you?
You go first.
Okay. Well, for me, thanks. I mean, it's one of those things that I get the luxury of playing so many different types of bands and so many different types of styles. Because, I mean, if you listen to Alice from the early 70s, all through the 80s, where it all of a sudden got kind of punk rock, borderline Billy Idolish, early Billy Idolish, and then, with Zipper Catches Skin, sorry, and then kind of went even a darker with Brutal Planet, and then kind of went garage rock with the stuff that I do. So I get the luxury of playing a bunch of different types of bands, and how I put my own style into it is that at least once or twice a song, I'll try and do one of those licks that I think I play in every single song or every single solo I've ever written. Because I do have some go-to licks, as I'm sure Steve does as well.
Sure, yeah. I think, having such a long career with Billy, and it's one of the things that and it was not always easy, but we tried to together develop a guitar style and sound that was unique to Billy Idol. And that encompassed inspiration from things like Suicide. John, I'll tell you who was a big part of some of the sonic things we tried to do on Rebel Yell was listening to John McGeoch from Susie and the Banshees.
Wow. Okay.
And these were things that Billy brought to me that, he said, it's great that you love Jeff Beck and Jimmy Page. And he goes, but there's some other stuff happening out there that maybe we can meld with that to create something very unique to Billy Idol Records. And I have to give him a lot of credit for working with me and developing that, sometimes frustratingly so, because I'd go and burn a solo or something and he'd say, yeah, now do the solo with 1/4 of the amount of notes, but still say the same thing.
Well, I'm glad that he developed you, because it subsequently helped develop me and a bunch of other guitarists out there as well, man. So good answer.
Awesome.
Hey, Chris, what do you got a question for us? You got a question for Steve?
I was gonna ask Steve where he come up with using the toy ray gun in some of the solos. I was in Nashville last year and saw a band actually bring out the toy ray gun and credit you for doing that.
Yeah. All right. So we had recorded the backing track for Rebel Yell. We did the vocal. We had it all going, and we're like, all right, now we got to do guitar solo, but it's got to be something that's going to take people's heads off. And I just thought, as many notes as I play, what we really need is some sort of sound effect. And there was a Billy Cobham record called Spectrum that Tommy Bolin played a solo on a song called Quadrant 4. And he did this sound effect with an Echoplex where suddenly the note would take off and you'd do this kind of like modulate, you'd sweep the tape head. And I said, we've got to come up with something like that. And we tried to kind of emulate that idea. I used to collect toy ray guns, vintage Chinese tin toys, and always science fiction based. And I happened to be watching TV one night and laying back and playing the guitar and pick up the ray gun and realize it played through the pickups of the guitar, the sound, and the rest, I guess, is part of my musical history.
How many toy ray guns do you get as gifts on tour every year? There's the question.
More than that, I get them stolen. People steal them.
Oh, because everybody wants. Yeah.
I mean, we basically had to put a hit out on somebody because
it was your favorite ray gun. It was your favorite toy one.
It was the one we had played Brighton Academy, and some girl
stole it.
Finagled her way on stage and stole it, and we put the word out through the internet. You better return this fucking ray gun.
Was it ever returned?
Yeah, we got it back.
Oh, good. Well, at least it ended nicely. Better than the missing Bisto Blanco club. That's a whole nother story and a whole nother podcast. But hey, Nick, what's happening?
Hey, Ryan,
a question,
how you doing?
We're going to take one more question, and then I think we're going to wrap up because Steve has been so gracious enough to be with us on this extra bonus Q&A. But thanks, man. Nick, what do you got?
Yeah. Okay, quick question for you. Since you guys aren't being able to play out in public other than playing at home, do you do anything during the day as far as just to keep your fingers nimble or anything?
Well, Steve? I mean, I got my guitar right now on me.
Yeah, I mean, I think
Steve's got his studio. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I think we always, people say, oh, do you practice? And I think anytime you pick up the guitar, I mean, it's usually my ultimate goal, if I pick up the guitar, is to come up with a good riff or good song idea. So I guess that's practice. But yesterday was laundry day, so I did a lot of that.
I mean, I know that it sounds good, and I know every time I read a Zakk Wylde, and it's true that Zakk Wylde does always have a guitar in his hand. It really is inspirational to have these guys that play all the time. But isn't there sometimes, please, Steve, side me with on this, when you get off tour and you don't even touch the guitar for a week or so? Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
If I go on vacation, I don't bring a guitar with me. I don't, because I think sometimes you have to be away from it to appreciate it,
Oh, dude. And then sometimes when you're in that groove, when the tour just gets, whether it's a week or two in, and then your fingers have already started to get those calluses that kind of, it doesn't hurt so much, then you're in the groove, and go see us on the second week of the tour.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah.
But hey, man, I want to thank you so much for coming on Into Trenches, being a
pleasure,
trooper,
Ryan.
And hopefully we can do it again. I love to geek out on guitar stuff, but more than that, I love to geek out about we didn't even talk about the New York days because we did used to run across each other at the Limelight. The lighting wasn't so good at the Limelight for some unbeknownst reason. but we used to run each other through there, and then we both ended up moving back to California. I moved back to California. You moved out there, and now I'm here in Sweden. So you never know where this world is going to take us. But I appreciate that we have this connection, and hopefully you can come on next time. We'll talk more. But thanks again, and thanks everyone for listening and watching. Again, at Steve Stevens on Instagram, at Ryan Roxie on Instagram. We really appreciate you taking that time and just staying safe, practicing your social distancing like was what we're doing right now. Thank you, Victor, for running all the the layovers and all the graphics today. You've done a great job, Mr. Vic Chalfant. And Steve, I will see you next time, right?
It's my pleasure, Ryan. Stay safe and best to your family and good health to you.
All right, folks. Talk to you later. We'll see you on
Bye-bye.
the next In the Trenches.
In the Trenches with Ryan Roxie.